We're obviously getting on with the new customer in Edinburgh as well. A very high-tech business that we're currently working with there, which has been good, hasn't it? That's been an interesting challenge, that project, because first of all, the science is not straightforward. It's not to me anyway. I mean, I've got a fairly techie background, but I mean I've never looked at any depth into lasers.
And especially not quantum lasers.
And especially not quantum lasers. No, that's right. So that whole thing has been really interesting, because the dilemma was, this customer sells a high-tech component or a thing which is used as part of a bigger machine to inspect silicon chips, to inspect cells, and using what's it called again? Raman spectroscopy.
Yeah.
See, I've even learned some of the lingo.
Get you.
And once I'd stopped using the term Newton meters and realised it was nanometers when we were talking about the wavelength
of
these things.
It's not, in fact, a car. And it's
no, that's right.
Talky
it all started making a bit more sense. But the interesting thing about that, and I think you found it interesting as well, was like trying to figure out how people who need those high-tech, super precise pieces of kit actually search when they're trying to solve the problem of, like, where do I get this? Are they looking by application or are they looking by characteristic? And we kind of resolved it to probably, for the most part, the characteristics of the laser.
Although I think this is one of those really interesting things. I was actually just writing about this morning for our blog. There's a specific thing that happens when you're right on the sort of weird fringes of an industry like this. And it happens a lot in B2B, I think, where you're sort of talking about a pool of sort of 20 to 30 people. You're trying to predict, well, it's probably not 20 to 30, is it? It's probably like 200 to 300 people who are realistically going to be going out and buying like a laser diode or, information on oil and gas tanker locations.
Are these diode pumped solid state lasers by any chance?
They may well be. If I knew what half of those words meant, I could tell you. But the point is, you're working with these really small volumes of people. The tools don't help you anymore. Because, for that example that you're just giving there with the lasers, if you ask sort of SEMRush or Moz or Ahrefs or Systrix or any of those tools, how many people search for this a month, they'll tell you none.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that's sort of, we know it's not true because we can go into people's search consoles and we can see the search volumes, we can see that people do, we can just see that it's very infrequent and all the data gets sort of messy at really low volumes. So there is a sort of an element with that gig and with a couple of the other gigs we're doing at the moment where you are sort of guessing. And I think you said this the other day when we were talking about a spreadsheet for another client, and it sort of stuck with me, is this idea that you just have to sort of take a gamble and wait for a bit and see what happens. And this idea that you can sort of know everything certainly in the run-up.
It's an educated guess, isn't
it?
Yeah.
And I think some people are like really uncomfortable with that. Certainly some clients would be if you said to them, this is sort of an educated guess. But you really are in the territory of, there is no hard and fast data. There's no real answers. And unless you're going to get 30 laser technicians in a room and say, right, imagine you're doing this project, what would you search on Google? You're never really going to know until you start testing things and trying things. And it's why a lot of the time, when it comes to sort of optimizing, you'll end up doing a few passes.
Yeah.
And sort of, we'll try this. Didn't work, but in Search Console, because you've started to rank for this other thing, we're seeing some volume come in there, so let's actually shift gears and go after that instead. And it's an iterative process, especially with B2B stuff.
Like most people who are trying to help businesses generate leads online, we we make great use of Google Search Console, but if your website isn't talking about something specific, then you don't get any traffic, but you don't get any
sort of data either.
Near misses either, because you're just not talking about it.
Yeah.
So by starting to talk and use different language, and then you start to see things, and then, like you say, you then see, oh, wait a minute, we're on page 10 for this phrase now, which we hadn't thought about, and it's got massive search volume, supposedly, and it's something to pursue.
And a really extreme example of that is when you get a website that sort of the products page has been optimized. Let's use the lasers as an example. It's been optimized historically for the word products, right? Search Console is not going to give you anything useful. It's never actually ranked for the word products. There's nothing in there. Yeah. You change it to sort of, like you say, solid state lasers, and suddenly you see traffic starting to shoot up for, I don't know, solid state diode pumped lasers or whatever, and you think, oh, okay, that's where I should have been. But that's the whole thing, really, isn't it? It's having your eyes open. It's being willing to sort of learn and react and move as the data comes in.
Yeah, that's right. It's it's been really interesting. It's good to be stretched.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Really, really having to think about it. Because some of the work we do, it's very easy to get good data and understand where the gaps are, and understand what the issues are and everything else. But more increasingly, I suppose you might say, we get presented with these bigger challenges.
The data is rubbish.
Yeah, the data's no good. So you've actually got to go, way back and actually approach it rather from a different perspective.
But I don't know about you. I actually prefer that. I find it much more exciting. Like there's sort of something quite nice about being given a huge data set and being able to say, okay, here's the pattern, here's what I can see out of it. But that is just sort of like number crunching.
Yeah.
I feel like when you don't have that data and you are being more inventive, that's when you're actually sort of using your brain a lot more and trying to get in the head of the person that's buying this stuff and work out what they would search for, that sort of thing.
Yep, that's right.